I'm Asa Waldstein, and I'm the founder and host of this regulatory education series, and I'm also the CEO of a regulatory consulting company called Supplement Advisory Group. So today we're going to have a lot of fun. We'll be talking about preparing for FDA inspections and FDA inspection code of conduct, and we'll be reviewing this from an operational and practical point of view. So myself and Stephen Yeager have helped oversee numerous inspections with no warning letters. And these inspections, they've been amazing. They've helped provide real-world learning tools. So the goal today is to share our experiences with you and help set you up for success. So our format today is we'll start off with a quick presentation that will lead into an open discussion with you. So please submit questions at any time through the Q&A tab on the top or bottom of your screen. This is really designed to be interactive and is an Ask Me Anything session. So feel free to ask anything pertinent here and we'll do our best to answer. And also a quick little bit of housekeeping. We are recording the event and a download link will be sent to all who sign up within 24 hours. If you just can't wait 24 hours and really want to watch it, send me an email and I can hopefully get that to you sooner. Also, a quick legal disclaimer, views by myself and Stephen are our opinions only and do not constitute any legal or regulatory advice. Okay, well, big thanks to Haley Chitty, communication specialist. Couldn't do this without you, my friend. He's providing administrative help today. So thanks again, Haley. He'll be dropping in detailed panelist bios into your chat box, which will allow you to get to know us and our companies better. And with that, let's get to the fun part. And allow me to introduce my good friend and fellow panelist today, Stephen Yeager. Stephen is Director of Quality and Regulatory at Mountain Rose Herbs and Chair of AHPA's Board of Trustees. Welcome, Stephen. Good to see you, my friend.
Hi, Asa. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad to be here. And I want to thank Asa and Haley for the opportunity to present here today with you all and looking forward to it.
Thanks, Stephen. We're really thankful you're here. So let's jump right in. So FDA inspections have resumed. Is the FDA conducting unannounced inspections that you've heard of?
So to the best of my knowledge, that all inspections are pre-announced right now. We did have we had an in-person inspection in November, and that was pre-announced they gave us a week notice. And then we presented our COVID policy to them. They read it over. They agreed to it. They won't sign any policies, but they did agree to adhere to our policy. And as far as I know, in-person inspections are all depending on the risk level of your county or your area. And I have heard of some inspections happening exclusively just sending documentation into the FDA to review.
Got it. So it sounds like they are doing some in person, but they're giving you warning. With you, it was about a week, and they're also doing some document only and then virtual inspections as well.
That's the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And to set a foundational tone here, can you quickly tell us the difference between a 483 and a warning letter?
Sure. So a 483 is an inspection observation. It's a judgment of the inspector that the food may be adulterated or could cause harm to the consumer. It's a written observation that you need to respond to with a written response within 15 days. And I could go into more detail about how to respond to a 483, but maybe we'll save that for the questions. If when you have a warning letter is something that's issued after the FDA has someone higher up in the FDA will review your inspection report and your 483 response, and if they feel it's not sufficient, you may be issued a warning letter. In my experience, though, there's a communication between the FDA and the firm before it escalates to a warning letter, depending on the severity of the observation. But so you usually can work with the FDA to prevent a warning letter. The easiest way to get a warning letter is to ignore the 483 and not cooperate with the FDA. And then they will resort to a warning letter at that point. And then at which time you'll have another 15 days to respond to that warning letter. And then if you don't respond to the warning letter or they don't feel like your response is sufficient, then that could escalate it into something further where they could try and prevent you from doing business at all.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And just to add another comment on that, warning letters are public record. 483s are not public record unless you do a Freedom of Information Act request, which we've been able to ascertain. The 2020 inspections, we'll be talking about a few of those details later. So again, warning letters, something you definitely want to avoid. They're public record and they have a lot of other ramifications. So moving on to the next one, Stephen, we'll be discussing CFR 111 and 117 today. Can you give us a quick overview of the difference, please?
Well, I guess the quickest, bigger picture is that if you're selling your products with the nutritional facts panel, you're mostly going to be subject to 117 or subject to 117, and perhaps the Foreign Supplier Verification Program and intentional adulteration, food transportation, sanitation protocols. 111 is going to be subject to, if you're marketing your product as a supplement, then you're going to be subject to 111, and you will still have some responsibilities with 117, especially in regards to foreign supplier verification, and there's some other aspects of 117 you might be subject to.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So if a dietary supplement company is making a finished product, so it sounds like the most likely FDA inspection will be under 111, but I've heard that 117 inspections are becoming more frequent. Is that what you heard as well?
Absolutely. We just had a 2-week inspection because we have so many SKUs. So we had 1 week they did 111, the second week they did 117, and it has elevated a bit because a couple years ago a year ago we had a 117 inspection, and the inspector even stated this is more of an educational inspection. We're not really enforcing too much at this time, but this time when they came in, they were definitely enforcing 117, and they're looking at the regulations are in full effect, I would say, at this point.
Perfect. So expect to see more 117 warning letters coming out.
And the warning letters I've been seeing have been primarily focusing on foreign supplier verification.
Yeah, got it. Perfect. And then I also wanted to ask, what types of facilities can the FDA inspect? Can they inspect distribution warehouses, or we've got a lot of people joining from the hemp world? What about hemp extraction facilities?
Yeah, production facilities can be inspected under 111 or 117. Holding and distributing, that's in 111, that's subpart M, and they're subject to inspection. So yeah, production facilities, holding, distribution.
Perfect. All right, so I think we'll get over to let me bring up some slides here. We got this in front of us. So Stephen, that was a great way to set the table, set the tone here. So now it's time to talk about how to prepare for an FDA inspection. And really half the battle is in preparation. So it's important to set yourself up for success. Before the FDA arrives at your facility, they will have likely reviewed your online presence for claims, which includes on your website, but also social media. And really, the FDA likely believes that if you're making claims online, you're probably not following GMP. So making claims online is the quickest way to shake a stick at the FDA, saying, pick me, asking for an inspection, and even more likely, making claims online is the best way to jump directly to a warning letter, which we've talked about reasons we want to avoid. Now, I'd like to talk about the do's and don'ts of marketing and what attracts attention. And I have a lot of these resources available on my website at asawaldstein.com and my YouTube channel, and Haley will be dropping in links for these. So again, you want to ensure no claims online. And this includes infographics, testimonials, hashtags, videos, and blogs. So I'm just going to kind of run through this really quick to set another foundational tone so that we can get to the real meat of the talk today. So I'm often asked, what constitutes a claim? And here are a few general rules. We will be sharing the presentation and slides so you can reference them later. But really quickly, anything ending in itis means inflammation of, such as arthritis. Anything a drug is indicated for, such as Xanax, being indicated for anxiety. Anxiety would be the claim. And most things, not everything, with anti or anti in the title, such as antiviral, anti-inflammatory, those would be claims. The name of any illness, of course. And really the root of all compliance questions is, am I making a statement which can be construed as treating, diagnosing, curing, or preventing any disease? If you are, definitely use caution. So it's common for the FDA to walk around the public portion of your facility to check for pest habitat, in my experience, before they inspect. And this includes stacks of pallets, tall grass, trash, and if the outside of your facility is dirty, it can really make your inspection go worse. So it seems like common sense, but in the real world at a busy manufacturing plant, it's more common than you think to see piles of potential pest habitat pile up outside. So just a couple comments here, and then I want to bring Stephen back in. I suggest putting an outside walk around on your weekly cleaning list, or having your sanitation supervisor take responsibility for this so it doesn't get overlooked. And having a sanitation supervisor is one of the requirements of 111, just as a side comment. So, you know me, I like animals. I like to tell quick stories. So here's a really quick one. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful peregrine falcon, this great bird, nesting above a facility doorway that I was at. Now, the bird was gorgeous, but its excrement was not. It was posing a huge hazard because it was dropping right in front of the door, and employees could potentially track in this hazard. So I had to ask the bird nicely to move. But can you imagine how bad it would be if the FDA investigator had noticed this before they're entering the building? So part of making sure you clean up the outside is making sure birds are not pooping in your walkways. Stephen, anything to add here?
No, I mean, those are all good points. You need to have, that's part of your prerequisite programs, to have facilities that are fit for production of food, and you don't want to have harborage areas around your facility. And those are things that even your Department of Agriculture, similar regulations there that they would be inspecting for.
Perfect. And does the FDA, have you heard of the FDA actually sitting in the parking lot watching employees coming in and out on breaks? Is that something
I've heard of it. I've never seen it. I wouldn't be surprised, especially if there were complaints or certain reasons for them to do that. But yeah, they want to see, your flow, and how where your trucks coming in and out of, and your shipments, and your receiving, how you're receiving it and shipping out. Absolutely. I don't know if they could sit in your parking lot, but they could maybe sit on a public street.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to add on that, you wouldn't want your employees inadvertently coming out on breaks in their smocks or their PPE. That would be obviously a sign of something you would not want to have happen. So, moving on to an FDA inspection document, or SOP, I like having one of these ready because it does show the FDA you're organized and helps create a feeling of calmness when the investigator arrives. So I've just kind of listed a few things here that I suggest adding to an SOP or document. These are common sense, but really the goal of this document is, what if you're not there? What if Mr. Stephen Yeager is not at his facility? What if we're, camping in the woods or something? What is the next person going to do to create a feeling of calmness when the FDA arrives? So I like to check identification. You want to make sure that they actually are who they are. They want you to do that. And then what type of inspection, such as for cause? Stephen, have you had unannounced visits where the FDA has come in and you've asked, well, what type of inspection is this?
Yeah. Usually they'll come in and make that very clear. I mean, the first thing they'll do is they'll present their credentials, and then they'll issue what's called a 482, which is a notice to inspect. They'll often ask who's the most responsible person on the premise, and they will sign that 482. And that begins, that gives them the authority to inspect the firm, inspect the facility, the production areas, and review documentation.
Yes.
So they will make it clear what type of inspection and the reason they are there. If it's a routine inspection, is it due to a recall, et cetera.
Yeah, perfect. And I like getting that. I like having that in this document, and I like knowing that up front, so you can kind of help move the investigation in a way that makes sense for the reason for the inspection.
Yeah, I agree with that. You definitely want to know who's going to be leading the inspection before they show up. Who's your team? Who do you want to be working with FDA? Who's going to be taking notes, which I think you're going to get to.
Yeah, indeed. And personally, I don't like being the most responsible party, because inadvertently I would, or if it did get elevated to a warning letter, that's really the name that's on the warning letter, is how you're understanding as well too. So usually it's a company CEO, for example.
Yeah, owner or CEO. That's why we work for other people sometimes.
Yeah, it provides a little level of protection there, a barrier. And also, I like a good list of company contacts. again, as we talked about, what if someone's not there? Who do you call? This will also show that you're organized. I also like to think about, where's the FDA going to sit? Because you don't really want the FDA sitting near a break room or customer service, as it's important to remember that everything's on the record. And I wouldn't want the FDA sitting one area of my facility where it takes them a long time to make copies. So I want to sit them in a kind of a quiet conference room, and also close to where my copies are and my photocopy machine as well. And then Stephen, I know that you're a big proponent of having daily closeout meetings, and maybe you could talk about that and whether people sign documents. You sign investigator documents while they're there.
Right. So the FDA generally, in my experience, will have the daily closeout meeting. They'll go over the documents that you may not have provided during that day that they are requesting, so you can have them for them in the next day. They'll go over the key points of the day, and most importantly, they're going to go over what you expect the next day, so you can try and get prepared. Perhaps maybe you need to, whatever they're going to ask. They know they're going to inspect certain areas and look at certain documents. You'll have you'll be aware of what might to expect. Also, if they notice anything that you think you weren't compliant with, if your firm, there's something in that during that day that didn't go as planned, and you feel like you can make those corrective actions overnight by the next day, I highly urge you to do that, because that you can make corrective actions during the inspection, which can prevent 483s or discussion points.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really, really important comment for everyone out there. I've had good luck walking back 483s. I've been fortunate enough during my 3 FDA inspections to not have 483, but I've had pretty good luck walking them back by closing them out immediately and then showing the investigator what we're doing. That's a really key important point.
It also shows that you're willing to make corrective actions, and that you even understand what corrective actions are needed. All that goes a long way during an inspection.
Yeah, the investigators are real people, and they want to teach you, and they want to set you up for success. So, it's good to have common courtesy, treat them very professionally, but at the same point, the guidance that I've received from FDA investigators during inspections has been invaluable. For example, one investigator once upon a time said, "I really want to see those plastic sheets over the receiving door so bugs can't come in." This was like 10 years ago or something when I first got inspected, 11 years, I believe. And so now, because one investigator said that to me, every facility I work with, I make sure that they have the plastic sheets in there. So there's a lot of learning there too.
Yeah, sometimes they will give you suggestions. They're not allowed to consult, but they can sometimes give you suggestions.
Perfect. And then I also wanted to say, yeah, that's a great comment. I wanted to say having an SOP ready or a document ready is a good training tool. So it allows the entire company to think in the FDA readiness mindset, or what would the FDA think mindset. And this can really avoid potential problems, such as a receptionist inadvertently refusing the investigation by saying someone wasn't there. That'd be really bad. So I like SOPs of these documents as good training tools as well. So you want to make sure your staff is well trained, and you want to make sure that people are professional and kind. Be good humans, I like to say, because an inadvertent rude greeting from a front office staff could set the wrong inspection tone. So investigators are people too, so human kindness goes a long way. Stephen, do you have any kind of discussion about optics? When the FDA investigator comes in, do you always recommend having a clean lobby and not having controlled documents laying around? How does it look at your facilities?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the first impressions go a long way. I mean, I've heard inspectors, one of the first things they do is walk into your bathroom. Is your bathroom clean? Because if the bathroom's not clean, what does the rest of the facility look like? But yeah, generally, we have, if you have a sign-in policy, be sure to adhere to it. Don't be like, oh, it's the FDA, you don't need to sign in. You should stick to your policies. Have that. They'll sign in. They might not agree to your protocols for signing in, but you can say that they'll say they're signing in as record that they were at your facility at least. And yeah, having a meeting room that's away from production areas in a quiet room I think goes a really long way, because they're going to bring their computers and they're going to bring one of the mountains of paperwork from you. So having that space where they can, I think they like that as well, a relaxed space to work in.
Yeah, I've never thought about they go directly to the bathrooms, but that's definitely right. And yeah, you always, again, to just echo what you said, you always want to make sure that whatever your policies are, you want to not just throw them out the window because the FDA is there. I've always asked the FDA to sign in. They've never signed in, but because they don't sign things, but at least it shows them that we're requiring them to adhere to the same policies that we adhere to. I also wanted to have a kind of a quick aside on, the FDA's goals. So one of the major FDA goal is food safety security. And they may want to test this because they want to ensure that the food supply is not tainted by terrorists or really bad folks. So you do not want the FDA to be able to walk in through a back production door or through a front office directly into the warehouse. That would be bad. So one of the goals of today is sharing our experience. So this is kind of a fun one I like to share. During one visit from the FDA, the investigation rather, started at the back door. The FDA knocked on the receiving door and said, "I'm with the FDA, I would like to come in." Now, our team member was really well trained, thankfully, and they said, "I'm not allowed to let everyone in. Please come in through the front." The investigator had already reviewed our online presence and also saw we had no pest habitat on the outside of our building. And then they saw that we had well-trained staff that didn't allow unauthorized entry. So when the FDA official came to the office and identified herself, I politely asked for identification, pulled out my FDA inspection SOP, and the inspection was off to a great start. Okay, and then so let's just talk about photography. Everyone's got their own opinion here, but I always suggest a no video photography sign clearly marked in the production doorway or in the foyer going into the warehouse. Because if possible, I do not want the investigator taking pictures of videos, because a picture is certainly worth 1,000 words. And in my opinion, if I have a posted policy about this, it's more defensible. But if the investigator demands to take pictures, you always want to make sure you take a duplicate picture. And then I guess we'll talk more about that later. But Stephen, anything to add on these points?
No, I mean, that's what we do. I have allowed FDA to take photographs and video, but every time they take a video or photograph, they need permission from me. I'm accompanying them on the inspection through our facilities. And then I have my scribe or also have a camera, and they take an identical photo or video. I wish I could have found it, but I did see a warning letter in the past 2 years that said your firm did not allow us to take video or photography, and I'd like to find that. It was brought up in a warning letter in the past 2 years. But again, if you have a policy, I guess you can stick to it. I do find that if you let them take a photograph here or there, it makes it just more relaxed. Of course, I tell them not to get any supplier information, et cetera.
Yeah, you wouldn't want them taking a picture next to a proprietary piece of machinery.
And if there's a staff worker, they have to have permission. We ask their permission as well.
Oh, okay, good. That's good. That's good to know. So kind of moving on here, let me just get to my next slide. Add here or jump in on.
Yeah, I always accompany an investigator. The more you can explain your processes rather than them trying to interpret it, and that goes with your documentation as well. They have a saying called that we're going to walk the docs. And I just don't like to hand them any document. I'll go over all of our documents, and I've been told by FDA inspectors they appreciate that. They don't have to interpret because sometimes it's not a cookie cut compliance. You might interpret the law, the rules, and then you have your way that fits your own. They don't expect it to be the same every time, is what I'm saying. So always accompany an investigator, and that also adds to accompanying them when you're giving them your documents in a way, going over the documents with them.
Got it. So is it your understanding the investigator can speak to any employee?
They've always asked permission. With 117, they're focusing on it more, I think. They've asked us for a few facility members that they could get permission to speak with, and they ask them about what they do here. And I think it's one of their ways of kind of seeing if their training matches up with their duties. But yeah, they've always asked permission, and
Good.
sometimes they let us pick the staff members that to speak with.
That's very nice of them. I've had them talk to my production employees, and my staff member just said, "Let me get back to you, or I have to check my SOP," which is a pretty good answer. Of course.
It's always best to be yes, no, yes, no, not to elaborate too much unless you feel like it's going to be to your advantage, in my opinion. But
yeah, absolutely. And so, as a friendly reminder, any marketing material the FDA sees, they can take a copy of. Think box stuffers in your shipping area. You obviously want to make sure they're claim free. And really, Stephen, you're an easygoing guy, and I'm sure but you're also professional, and you know what you're doing. This is common sense, but being not defensive and being nice to the investigators and professional to the investigators really goes a long way, because
totally agree.
If you're defensive, it's going to make your life a lot harder.
Yep.
So when the investigator asks you things, Stephen, do you go, how much detail do you go into? What's your strategy there?
I try to stick to the questions they're answering. I do not try to, because I've found in the past, if you can elaborate too much, and you'll go down a rabbit hole with something that maybe wasn't even asked of you. Yep. So I think you want to elaborate when you can, but mostly you try to stick to just answering their questions and providing the documentations they're asking for. Yeah, I could go on, but I think that's and they're just doing a job. They're people too, and I found that the first stage usually a little bit more, and they let their guard down usually after a few days if you're being professional with them as well.
I like it. Thank you for that. And so, what is your philosophy? I only offer water. Do you only offer water to your investigators?
I only offer water. They often don't take it. Anything else can be seen as a bribe. So even by you can't really. They won't accept anything. And
and so you just want to hands off. Yeah. Completely. Don't say, "Oh, you should try this product." Nothing like that. I mean, it's common sense, but in the moment, you want to make sure that you're not doing that. But you can be a nice person again. That's kind of the theme today. Be a good human. I like it. So you can suggest a restaurant for lunch or dinner, as this common courtesy certainly goes a long way.
You just can't buy them lunch or dinner.
No. Definitely don't do that. That would be bad. You can recommend where they should go, and that's sad. So, Stephen, this is our final slide before we kind of jump into the really fun part, the Ask Me Anything session. So, are there some key points here you'd like to share with our attendees?
Sure. You mean quickly turn around on requests for documentation? I mean, it's not required. You can always say you'll have that document for them tomorrow. I think it's good to have a balance of both, because if you have a simple document, it's solid, get it to them, within, a few minutes. That shows shows something. But if you don't have it, if you think you need to review that document before you give it to them, it's totally, you can totally give it to them the next day. I mean, they're not going to ding you for that at all. I think you have a number of days to get documents to them that they request. But yeah, quick turnaround can be good, but also don't take the time if you need it. Sometimes at lunch, I'll be reviewing the documents they're asking about, or they usually leave around mid-afternoon, because they go home, go back to their facility if they're back to their hotel usually, and they'll work into the night looking at everything you gave them. So you'll usually have time after each day to go work on some things or look at documents. Make copies of everything. We do that. We talked about guiding the investigator through the documents. Correcting observations within the inspection can go it could change a 483 to just a discussion point, or it could turn it into just no discussion or observation. I do want to say that besides 483s, they can also issue what's called discussion points, and they're not, it's not an official observation, but you're going to want to respond to those discussion points like a 483. I can get into the question and answers later on that. It's okay to say I'm not sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's better than, trying to elaborate on something you're not sure about. You can call your counsel, always be truthful. Yeah, and don't overpromise corrective actions. That's a good point. They will often, if it's not a serious concern to health of the consumer, they will give you time, and even on advice of our counsel, give yourself more time to make those corrective actions, even if it's in the moment when they're, when they're doing their sign off on their discussion points, or if you're responding to a 483, give yourself enough time to fix. Like we had a discussion point, and we said we'd have 3 to 6 months to fix it, and so, but we really fixed it in about a week.
Perfect. I love that. Don't overpromise. I like that. And that was a great run through here, Stephen. I wanted to add a couple things with guiding the investigator, and I want to clarify what I mean by that is the investigator may say, "Can I see a batch production record from the past week, or show me a label of something you made in the past month?" So, or I want to come back in the next week and see a liquid run. I'd rather have them review a simple formula with a few ingredients than one with many steps and ingredients. So here's a funny one. Everyone's going to laugh. The same is true for labels. So during one inspection, a QA manager I had opened up all the label cabinets, all, because labels obviously have to be controlled and locked, had opened up all of them and was letting the investigator go through them to pick out whatever they wanted. This is not suggested. So I calmly went into the office and tactfully closed some of the label cabinets and then helped guide them toward labels I wanted to review. Because it's important to remember that if the FDA does find discrepancies, they'll certainly keep digging.
Can I add to that, Asa, a little bit real quick? So that's a really good point. They are going to ask usually what's your top 5 selling products, who are your top 5 suppliers on how much you're getting from them. But they will look at from your bill of lading to your tracking of your shipping that to your customer. So they're going to look at all the paperwork in between. So it's good, like Kaylee said, Asa said, to try and pick something that's maybe simpler.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the FDA can't compel you to produce documents you don't have. So let's say that you don't have a list of your top 5 customers or what products. Now, the FDA can spend the next several days going through your shipping and manufacturing records and looking for that, or it's up to you. It's within your right to refuse it, but I've always provided that list to them with the caveat of, I just had to put this together to you to try to make your inspection go easier.
Usually for us, they'd be like, well, if you don't know exactly, what's your best guess?
Perfect. Yes. I like that. Unbinding. So thanks for that, Stephen. So before we get to our Ask Me Anything, I've got a few questions. So Stephen, what factors elevate the likelihood of receiving an inspection?
Well, I know recalls automatically generate an inspection. I would, like you said, claims. Probably those are the 2 I know of. A solid answer on. I could speculate that, if you sell a lot of products and you're, a larger facility where your products are going to a larger consumer base of the population, you would probably be more on the list for an inspection. But
yeah, I've had the FDA follow breadcrumbs. I used to run a manufacturing facility that made a couple hundred products, and yeah, they kind of followed those breadcrumbs up to me. And also I've heard, I think I asked this during one inspection, the investigator said, well, actually, the more certificates of free sale that you request, the higher up you get on the potential inspection list. Now, I never had that vetted, but it makes some logical sense. Got it. And obviously, if you're making products for someone and your customers are making claims, this can elevate their inspection or warning letter risk and lead back to you. So it's a really good best practice to support your customers to not make claims, and it's a win-win because it definitely adds to the customer experience.
Specifically, okay. Disease claims.
Yeah. Especially disease claims, for sure. Structure function, maybe a lot less, but we discussed that in the last webinar from a few weeks ago. You can find that on my YouTube channel. That was a fun one. So one more question, Stephen, before we open it up. if a company gets a 483, what are the next steps here?
So the next steps would be to formulate a response. You're required to submit a written response within 15 business days. So you would want to identify the root cause of that observation, create corrective actions, and submit that to the FDA. And you really just can't say, I'm going to do it. You need to have written proof. So if you were responding to, say, a simple one, say you didn't have a batch record, you'd want to not just say you're going to make a batch record, you'd want to have an example of your draft of your batch record that you're implementing. So that would be the next process there. I have found that if you need extension on those 15 days, FDA will sometimes work with you and extend the period to another 15 days. But eventually they're gonna say, no, you need to get a response in. And the worst thing you could do is not respond at all. You can buy yourself some time with responding and then saying this is a complicated corrective action for us. We need a little bit more time to figure this out. But not responding at all and just kind of ghosting them, that's a real quick way to get a warning letter.
Yeah, it sure is. I was reading a warning letter from a few months ago, and someone got a warning letter because they didn't respond to a 483 from something like 9 months ago. Now this, to give credit to the FDA, this was kind of when the coronavirus pandemic was starting. But yeah, you always want to respond, and you want to respond in full. So I totally agree with you, Stephen. Those are good comments. So Haley, I think we'll turn it over to you. It's the time for the Ask Me Anything section of our event, and I've seen a lot of great questions come in. So thank you again to everyone who submitted questions so far. Keep them coming, and we got nearly 80 pre-webinar questions as well. So thank you to everyone there, and over to you, Haley.
All right, I just wanted to say it sounded like there might have been some issues with the links been sent around. These can all be downloaded as a PDF document, and I'll post that link again, so hopefully you can get that. We had a lot of questions about mixed use facilities, specifically farm. And so I'm just wondering if you guys can address any specific issues related to those mixed use facilities. One attendee is building a building close to where the farm and herbs are grown. So anything specific there?
Well, the farm would be subject to 117 and perhaps produce law, the FSMA. And then if they're producing supplements in the other facility, then it'd be subject to 111. And they probably wouldn't inspect them at the same time, if they did, it would be probably different registration numbers, or what they call FEI numbers, and they would be separate inspections, separate 482s, I would imagine.
All right, and another question people had was about CBD manufacturers and hemp extract manufacturers. Are you aware of FDA currently inspecting those facilities?
I'll let Asa take that.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I know it hasn't been elevated. I believe out of all the FDA warning letters to hemp CBD companies, only one has come from an actual inspection. That being said, several others have been inspected. I mean, I'm in Colorado, it's a small world. I think at least a few others, I should say, have been inspected, and that has not been elevated to warning letters. So if you're a hemp CBD company, yeah, the likelihood of inspection is certainly there. You, of course, want to make sure that you are registered with the FDA under the Bioterrorism Act. That's kind of step one. And to people out there looking to purchase products, you always want to make sure that your manufacturer actually is FDA food facility registered. That's kind of a ticket to play in the dietary supplement world. So yeah, it's certainly a likelihood. Anybody making any type of food products, dietary supplements, and I treat hemp CBD just the same as a dietary supplement, certainly has a risk of inspection.
I see a question on I did neglect to say, another way FDA can trigger inspections is customer complaints. You are required to, on or 111, to monitor your complaints, particularly your adverse events. It's a requirement. You need to document your adverse events, and QC needs to review your adverse events and take corrective actions if necessary. And then if it's elevated to a serious adverse event, you need to report that to the FDA within 15 days. And that could be a whole nother webinar, perhaps, Asa, on adverse events and serious adverse events.
Yeah, then we could add the COVID response, which is, I know, 48 hours on there too. Yeah, it's really interesting.
All right, quick question. Can the FDA audit third-party analytical lab that tests their dietary supplements?
That's a good question. I would defer to Alon at Alchemist. I forget. For some reason, I feel like he has been audited, but I doubt it. Actually, I don't see why they would be.
I believe they're under different authority. I was helping to run a company that had a lab, and that was inspected by CLIA for the CLIA certification, but I've never heard of an FDA going into those labs. And of course, there's DEA registration requirement for some labs as well too.
Yeah, I'm going to say no, that they're not under that subject to 111 or 117. I mean, if it was a criminal investigation and they needed to acquire certain documents for the microbial testing or ID testing, they might, but that would be a whole different situation. Not an inspection, it'd be a criminal investigation.
All right, this was an interesting question, talking about virtual inspections. And it also this question came in another form too, but basically asking if you have a community that's behind a password protected area on your website, can FDA access that? Are they going to audit those claims? So again, if it's password protected somewhere.
That's a really good question. And so it has to do with risk mitigation and likelihood as well too. I'm going to be very tactful with my response here. So if something's in the open World Wide Web and it's able to be easily searched when it's not behind a gated protection wall, it's much more likely to be reviewed than if it's behind a gated wall. There's only one warning letter where the warning letter verbiage implied that the FDA went through this password protected or gated or practitioner oriented wall. I wasn't sure based on the warning letter if that's exactly what happened. Of course, I reached out to them. They never responded because they thought I was probably a crazy person asking this. But yeah, I don't know. It's all about if something's open and easily searchable, the FDA is more likely to see it and go after it. That's my diplomatic comment. Hopefully that helped.
But you would also suggest that putting it behind a password protection is not 100% guarantee of anything.
I would agree that it's not 100% guaranteed.
I mean, you would look, are you a brand selling to consumers directly, or are you selling to practitioners? There's a whole, it's a can of worms. We go down a rabbit hole, but it depends who your end user is. And yeah, if you don't provide if you're selling to consumers behind a passworded, they might get curious, and if you don't provide to them, then they would probably have to issue some kind of warrant or whatever to look at that section.
Yeah, and I'll say, yeah, that's a great comment. And I will say that I have seen warning letters from newsletters. So the FDA has signed up for newsletters or gotten the newsletters in some way. So, and in particular, with any type of high-risk claims, my consulting company, we look at things on a scale of 1 to 5 on the risk level. So anything that's a 4 or 5 on the risk level, Parkinson's, COVID, cancer, PTSD, opiate withdrawal, anything like that, the FTC in particular has been very clever at connecting the dots. Just kind of a side comment there, that does include claims made on podcasts and claims made on videos that the companies are substantiating by hosting on their website.
And a similar kind of question, someone was asking about the claims and if it's the same for an herbalist as for a brand. So a company making claims versus a maybe herbalist with a practice making claims.
Stephen, you want to start with that one?
Well, it does, if it's, so I'm not an expert on this, but from what I think is that if the practitioner is in a practitioner setting and giving that herb to a client, you would not be subject to it, or there hasn't been enforcement on that too much as far as I know. But if it's a brand and you're selling it and it's not really any, practitioner level or client to practitioner to client, then you could be subject. But again, it's a sicky gray area.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I believe that for compounding herbal pharmacies, there's either enforcement discretion or something in there. So I would say that's probably pretty low risk. Of course, you want to be truthful, not misleading, not hurt anybody. But there's been so Stephen and I are both herbalists. Stephen owns a really wonderful herb school called Columbines School in Oregon, or I believe is an acting partner there. So we love our herbal community, and we love presenting at places like American Herbalist Guild. So the way that herbalists have gotten in trouble over the past year is by copying coronavirus type of protocol. So it's copying like a Stephen Buhner protocol and then putting it on their website saying, hey, I'm selling this product that's from this person's protocol for this. Absolutely. There's been at least 4, maybe 5 warning letters, FDA or FTC and FDA combined with this. So you obviously want to be careful. I know I'm saying everything Stephen said, but if you're a practitioner, you're compounding directly, I don't know. I think it's pretty low risk as long as you're not hurting people. But if you're selling on the open market, you're certainly responsible.
Yeah, let's see. Next question. Do you have any specific advice for smaller companies working to come into CGMP compliance? What documents or practices should be at the top of their priority list?
How about you, Stephen?
Sorry, yeah. Well, yeah, it seems daunting, right? When I first started doing this 14 years ago, it was, wow, where do I start? Well, you want to have good health and hygiene protocols in place, just basic hygiene SOP. What I think is that you should focus on documents that you can't create later. So you should have batch records. If it wasn't written down, it didn't happen, according to the FDA. So things that happened in the past, you're not going to be able to recreate that batch record. You're not going to be able to recreate those identity or potential contaminant tests that you did. So getting your specifications in line for your components, for your packaging, having documented tests of reviewing those ingredients and packaging, and then having batch records of a record of what you did when you maybe made that tea blend or that tincture or extract. I think those are good starting points to have process controls. You might call those, have your process control documents in place. Because you can make a batch and they're going to come inspect you next year, and if you don't have the documentation for that batch, you're most likely probably going to get a 483, unless you already took the time to make, since then made those documents and are using them. So I think that's a good place to start. It's really easy in the subparts to see what's required on a batch record, what's required on a master manufacturing record. Have a good customer complaint setup, so where you document your customer complaints. A recall, even though that's not required in 111 technically, I would recommend having a recall plan, which is required in 117, and creating specifications and a testing protocol. And training, documenting your training. Also documenting your sanitation, really important. Documenting your cleaning of your equipment, your work areas, your deep cleaning of your facilities. All that you're not going to be able to reproduce during an inspection if it wasn't done already.
I love that. And part of 111, as we talked about earlier, one of the few absolute black and white requirements is you have to have a sanitation supervisor. So you've obviously want to assign that to somebody.
Well, if it's a small company, you could put that hat on and then take it off and then go make extracts. But you have to have someone who's designated as a sanitation.
Yeah, it's a literal hat. But it's covered with a hairnet, so it's okay. And I would like to also say that AHPA he's humble about this, but he actually is chair of the entire AHPA Board of Trustees. I am a former board member and I do chair of the Cannabis Committee. You can see I roll with my banner here. Quick AHPA plug, the American Herbal Products Association has been in existence nearly, I believe, 39 years. So AHPA has a lot of wonderful guidance documents. A lot of them are free on the ahpa.org website, and those can really help you set you up for success. So best practices for herbal companies. So AHPA is a great resource. I mean, I learned most of what I know from AHPA, and AHPA is fantastic.
Absolutely.
And I would like to also say, if I may, so Josh Long, I believe Haley's dropping an article into Josh Long. He's my favorite regulatory writer. I tend to say that a lot because he's really that great. So he did a FOIA request, Freedom of Information request for 483s for 2019 and 2020, and wrote a wonderful article about that, which we've dropped the link into your chat box. So the top 5 most cited 483s, and this really dovetails into what Stephen was saying, is the top 483, 29.3% of the people got a 483 for not establishing finished product specs. That's a pretty basic one. How about, there's another one that was 20%, so not following QC procedures. So writing an SOP so vigorous that you didn't follow it. So that's 1/5 of all the 483s. Component specs, that's 18%. And then written procedures for holding and distributing. So these may not be manufacturers, but they may be companies that are holding and distributing. And that was 18% of the 483s last year, or 18.4% rather, were for that. And that's going to be probably our next webinar here coming up in the next month or so. And then, of course, on there, I think about 15% not establishing an identity, for bringing in that raw material and then identifying it. So that's a great question.
I would add another thing you can do is subscribe to FDA's warning letters. They come in every Wednesday, and you can learn a lot from seeing what the warning letters are, what's in those warning letters, and see what they're focusing on. It's like for now, like with 117, we're seeing or it's not really 117, we see that they're focusing on foreign supplier verification program. Many warning letters going out for that right now.
Yeah, such a good point. I always get so excited when they arrive. I really, really love reading warning letters, as people have seen my previous events know. I love it. So yeah, it's a great way to develop in-house expertise. And if you are a member of AHPA, they do an AHPA alerts every week, and it's kind of a cliff notes.
And you can get 483s. It's behind the Freedom of Information Act, so you need to pay for those. And most of the information, not most, a lot of it's redacted. But if you have the ability to get those, they can be really helpful.
Yeah, at least you get the warning letters.
Yeah.
And that's really valuable too. So Haley, I think we got time for one more question before we start to wrap it up.
Yes, just a follow-up on that position you were talking about. Is there any certifications or qualifications that position needs to have? The Sanitation Supervisor?
I don't believe so.
If you can get some kind of training, I would recommend it, but it's just having a sanitation schedule and having someone who, recently we had a discussion point, I've heard of people getting a discussion point for, we had the sanitation schedule, but it wasn't reviewed by the sanitation manager within a week. And it was a weekly cleaning schedule. And, you want to make sure that, you're verifying these sanitation schedules. So you document that it was done, and then you should document that someone made sure it was done. And that's through verification is usually means it requires a signature.
Not written down, it didn't happen. Yeah, that's a really great comment from some recent feedback with the FDA. So I think that wraps up our Ask Me Anything session. We could go on for hours, so maybe next time we'll go a little longer. But anyway, so thank you much for all the questions. Stephen, for a final question for you, any last advice or takeaways you'd like to leave our attendees with today?
Take a deep breath when you're looking at the regs. Look for the written requirements. They're in the GMPs, in the regulations. It says this is you must. When it says must and it says written, they mean it. So focus on those areas, and it's always continuous improvements, and it's never ending. So just don't get overwhelmed and just keep plugging away.
I love it. I love it. And we did also drop a few more AHPA, to kind of plug AHPA again. It's an ORG. We love AHPA. AHPA has a couple free webinars we provided links on. One is preparing for FDA inspections. It's wonderful. I highly recommend that. And another one is CGMP basics for hemp CBD companies. That being said, totally applicable to our friends in the broader dietary supplement world as well. And as a reminder, you can head over to asawaldstein.com, just my name.com, to read my regulatory blog, helpful hints videos, past webinar links, and to learn more about my consulting services with my company, Supplement Advisory Group. So a big thanks to all of our attendees. Oh, thank you so much for being here today. This has been a really wonderful turnout. Thank you again. Big thanks to Haley Chitty for your administrative support. You're amazing. I couldn't do this without you. And big thanks to you, Stephen, for sharing your expertise.
Thank you all. Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. And at this point, this does conclude our webinar, and I wish everyone a great day.